appreciate the chance to come back today. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. I know the last time I was here, and I always say this every time I talk, whatever we talk about, it's important. I'm actually going to pass something out. Can you pass that out to everybody? So I brought you something from South Lyon. You're not going to be tested on it, but since we're talking about this specifically, I think this applies. And it should be interesting to you. So we'll start once everybody gets one of each. We have extra? All right. Awesome.
We don't know that we
Did everyone get one of each?
No,
Oh, we're short. I'm so sorry. Here, this is you. You might have to share. You know what? If we're short, we might have to share. I apologize. I think I only made 20. So if you have to sit next to each other, that's fine. So what I brought you was a piece of information that our fire department, and more than likely, it's very similar to what each one of your departments put out at the end of every year. It's called an annual report. And the annual report communicates a bunch of different information to the public, and it's basically, what did your fire department do? I'm gonna ask Cap if, I'm gonna borrow this, I'm sorry. I'm gonna ask Cap if, can you print a few extras of these off? I apologize. Two-sided.
I think we need more of these ones too, sir.
How many?
I think we still need this row and that row.
I apologize. I only did 20, so how many do we have? Okay, so 4. Okay, so the annual report, it's an accountability to the public and to your city government about the activities of the fire department for the previous year. What did you do with your time? Because you will start to learn that firefighters, you work for the government, and your paycheck comes from taxpayer money. So your mom and dad, when they own a home, every year they bellyache when they have to pay taxes, and part of that money goes to your job and your paycheck. So fire departments put out this report. And it relates today because we're talking about everything kind of that's not actually putting out fires. And you're gonna find in your job here as a firefighter that fighting fire is only a small percentage now of what you're gonna be asked or required to do. So every time your pager goes off or your minuter or whatever you call it, rover or I am responding, it's not always a structure fire. It sounds great because that's what we train for, and as firefighters, that's what we love to do because that's where our adrenaline comes from. But the vast majority of the other calls that you go to fall in this category right here. And with that being said, we got to know what we're getting into. We got to understand what we're going to. It's one thing to be all happy and get your turnout gear on real quick and jump on the truck and be like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. We're going we're going to get to go to a call. But it's more than that, because at some point when you become Fire 1 and 2, over here, I believe. Let's see. Yep, so I think I took yours. Can you do me a favor and pass these out to whoever didn't get them? But at some point, like I said, when you become Fire 1 and 2 and turn 18, you're going to be a contributing member in a very more meaningful way on scene. You already, a lot of you, depending on your department policy, once you pass a certain level of your education, you're probably riding the truck now. And you're kind of in that safe zone right now. You're an observer, but yet you can contribute. Thank you. But it all kind of changes for you when you turn 18 and you get that blessing from the state of Michigan as your Fire 2 certificate. That's when you become more hands-on. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. So if you look at the paper, and again, you're not going to be tested on this, but this is just a point of reference. So the one page has a whole bunch of writing on it, and it has a breakdown of all the calls that South Line Fire went on last year in 2021. So at the very end, I think the total was 1,059-ish, 58, 59. And then as you kind of go backwards, so you go back up, it breaks it down. How many fires did we go to? How many medicals did we go to? And in those categories, it has this stuff. We're going to be talking about vehicle extrication. We're going to be talking about wildland fires, water rescues, high-angle rescues, and I'm only going to do a small portion of the chapter today, so this is going to be the topic for the week. But keep this in mind as you study this week. These are the calls that you're going to go on. The second page has that pie chart on there. So the pie chart represents, it's a visual representation of all that data. And if you look, structure fires are only a small sliver of that bigger pie. The vast majority of that pie in red is medicals. That's the nature of the business now. But then there's all those other little slivers. Now I gotta tell you, the departments that you are on may go on more calls than we do. And some departments that you're on may go on calls less than South Line did. And as you go into your career and you move away, whether you go to Livonia or Lansing or Grand Rapids or New York or Chicago, they're all gonna have a pie chart. And by and large, it's gonna look the same. The vast majority of the calls are gonna be medicals. There's gonna be a sliver of structure fires because that's what we are trained to do. And then there's the other. So we're talking about the other, okay? So if this interests you, and as you go out and look for a department to join and get a full-time career with, and you wanna know how busy are they, what kinds of calls do they go on, do they go on these kinds of calls, you can look at that annual report, hopefully, that they put out, and you can see what you're getting into. And that's what we need to find out today. What are we getting into? So, when you did your reading, and I touched on it a few times, we're talking about how you relate to the scene as a firefighter too. And we call all these extra calls technical rescues. When you go on a medical, it's a rescue. But we're talking about something more advanced, something that has more working components to it. And we're gonna break that down, what it means. When you go to these calls, whether it's a structure fire or a medical, and specifically today is we're going to these more technical rescues, these more involved incidences. There's kind of two things that happen at the same time when you get there. And the first part is it's what happens on every call. So you're gonna find that when you go on a medical, the people that you respond with that are EMTs, they're gonna be putting on maybe a surgical mask now. They're definitely gonna be putting on gloves. They might put on eye protection. That's the BSI part of it, basic bloodborne pathogens kind of safety. And then there's the scene safety of it. So we're sizing up the scene. If you go on a medical, is there a dog that's gonna bite me? Is there an angry family member? Is there something other going on at that place of the incident that's gonna harm me? Do I need to call the police? Can I handle this on my own? Is the person exceptionally large and there's only two of us? Do I need to have more people come? So those kinds of things go on at every call, even technical rescues. But then at the same time, there's other tasks that happen because our job is to rescue the person in a timely fashion. These kinds of technical rescues that we're going to talk about, they're what I would call they're time sensitive. If we don't act, if we don't do our job, if we don't understand what it's going to take to rescue that person out of that particular situation, chances are they're going to get hurt more or they could die. I realize that we're teenagers, but our job as firefighters, we save lives, right? That's one of the big three, right? So you're going to find, when you're new, you have the luxury of kind of having someone above you, your crew boss, your incident commander, tell you what to do. You're going to be given very specific tasks as it relates to that whole event. Go get this, go set up that, go do this. It's very simple. It takes the pressure off us. But you have to understand, even you fall in all of these circles. So if you look at the chart, and I looked at this at first, I was like, man, what is going on here? So when you're at a scene, all of these things are happening at the same time. And you and me, we fall right in the middle, right? Do we know, what is this called? What diagram is this? It's a Venn diagram, right? And we, as firefighters, we fall in here where all of these circles overlap. Because again, all of these things are happening simultaneously or at the same time. So we're getting to the scene, we're looking, what do we have? How many patients do we have? Is there fire? Is there something that's gonna make it worse? Is the building collapsing as we're rolling up? Is it already collapsed? Is it a high rise? This communication. So you and your incident commanders and your bosses are talking to each other. And you're telling each other what it is you see. So you may have not touched on this, maybe, I don't know. But as it relates to the scene, you have one person in charge usually. That's the incident commander. Okay? That person may or may not be the ultimate resource in that particular event. So what I mean by that is you're going to find in your career that there's going to be one thing in the fire service that really fires you up and piques your interest. Could be suppression, could be fighting fires, could be mechanic. You could decide that you want to take care of the fleet and make sure that the fire trucks are in good working order. You could be a ropes and knots kind of person and decide that when it comes to high angle rescue, that you're the go-to person that knows everything there is to know about ropes and knots. Or confined space rescue. And this is going to be your niche in life. For me, it's SCBA, or it's air monitoring. Those are kind of the two things that I like to do. But again, the incident commander is going to rely on each one of you, not only for what you see or what you hear, but also for what you know, and you're going to be contributing in a meaningful way when appropriate to help that incident commander make decisions. And then down here, stabilizing the situation. What do we need to do right now to make sure that this situation doesn't get worse, right? We want to save lives. So if we delay too long, if we maybe park the truck too close to the scene, if somebody leans on the side of the building and then the other side collapses and falls on our victim and kills them, right? If we put a lot of water on a fire in hopes to get it down and then we end up drowning our patient, those aren't good things. So what do we need to do at that time to make sure that no more additional harm is going to be caused to our person? This stabilizing the victim, that's kind of what do we need to do when we actually physically come up to the patient? Sometimes there's incidences where you're not able to easily access the patient right away. Some other function or activity has to happen before you actually come up physically next to your patient. to supply medical aid. And then the other thing that's happening too is we need to kind of control the environment that we're working in. Because again, and I'm going to use the structure fire example. So if a building's on fire and people are evacuating out of all sides of the building, you think, great, as firefighters, my job is to go inside, not only to put out the fire, but I have to do a search, right? Well, if you have doors on the, if you're running in the front of the building and you have people running in the back, like they already ran out and the building is literally on fire, and you have people running back in to get their cell phone or their purse, and the person in front says, oh yeah, everybody's out. You think, okay, well I don't have to do a search and rescue. Well, that scene is unsecure. You need to make sure that the entire perimeter of your incident is under control. You want to have control of who is accessing that site. Because it's already going to be hard enough if you have one patient or one victim. Imagine what it's going to be like if 3 or 4 people go back. And these things happen in real life. You would be surprised. Like people on a daily basis, they escape a fire in their home only to run back inside to rescue their own pet, and then they die of smoke inhalation and their pet dies. That's our job, right? We have SCBA. We're trained for that. And as you go to these calls, you're going to be trained to deal with these things. So technical rescue, and you can kind of look at the South Lyon breakdown, because you will find some of these on there, not all of them. A technical rescue could be any one of these. It could be a confined space. We're going to talk about what that is. We're just going to list these right now, and then we're going to kind of slow down, and we're going to talk about each one specifically to understand them more and how you fit in. So confined space rescue, trench rescue, that's typically at construction areas. Structural collapse, for whatever reason. Vehicle extrication, swift water, surf, dive. I would also, below is a different type of water rescue, ice water rescue. Wilderness rescue, cave, mine, and tunnel collapse rescue, or then there's kind of the catch-all specialty rescue. Because I gotta tell you, as you have your career in the fire service, you're gonna end up with a whole book of stories at the end with your partners. Remember the time that we went and did this? Remember the time that we went and did that? Yeah, that was really crazy. That's probably going to be in the specialty area. A couple months ago, in a neighboring community, we were called from mutual aid for our ladder truck. It's 95 feet. 2 boys climbed up a big pine tree. They were 12. It's a true story. And that was great. They did it on a dare. Hey, let's climb up this tree. Okay, I could go higher than you. Well, they went up about 40, 45 feet up in the air, and guess what? It got dark. Time of year, it got dark, and they got scared because they couldn't see, because it was like pitch black up at the top of this tree, and they couldn't see, and their parents found them and called the fire department to come and rescue them. So we brought the ladder truck there. It's a high-angle technical rescue. It's not fighting fire. Okay, so this next slide, you see this in your book. These are just general pictures of what these things might look like. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The top here is a confined space call. We have a tripod, and then you have a rescuer being lowered into a pit. The next one over, trench rescue. Again, I said that's probably more than likely to construct some sort of construction site. You have structural collapse, which, think about it, if you're watching the news, what's going on in Europe, in Ukraine, those firefighters, those Ukrainian firefighters, they're probably dealing with a lot of these very same things, right? And then there's your standard vehicle extrication. Then the guy on the bottom, this is kind of 2-part, it's the same slide. You have the rescue swimmer, rescue diver, and then you have the lineman on the side. And if you notice, the guy on the outside has just as much gear on as the guy in the water, and that's because of scene safety and the fear that that person could be pulled into the water and become a victim. themselves, right? We don't want to do that. We're the rescuer. Our job is to rescue, not become the victims ourselves. So, never perform rescue tasks that you are not either trained or qualified or equipped for. This is, if you don't follow this rule, this is a recipe for disaster. This is where you get hurt. This is where your partner gets hurt. If you are and again, the culture in South Lyon, and hopefully it's the culture here in Brighton, Howell, and everywhere else, speak up. If you are asked to do a job function on scene that you are not trained for, say something. Because if you don't, it's either not going to go well or somebody's going to get hurt and it's not going to go well. You need to be qualified. So there are rules, and NFPA puts, of course, like everything, it puts requirements on training. Again, at the beginning, I said as it relates to the state of Michigan, you have to be fire 2. And then you have to have the right equipment. So if you're going to jump in the water to save somebody, and the water is colder than 32 degrees, right? You need to have the proper equipment, because if you don't, you very quickly yourself will become the second victim and the third victim. And I know it sounds like, oh, that doesn't happen, but I got to tell you, you can go online, you can Google many firefighter near misses or calls that don't go well. There are carbon monoxide calls where the fire department responds to a place like McDonald's because the employees are not feeling well, and they walk in and they don't do an air sample, and then they become quickly overcome by CO poisoning as well. There are many documented, unfortunately, there's many documented fatalities or deaths where a city worker goes down inside a sewer to perform some routine maintenance. That's what they always say. It's routine, happens all the time. Well, on that particular day, that person went down there and didn't do their air sampling, didn't take the proper precaution, and wasn't trained properly, and is overcome with fumes. And then they become a victim, and then their coworkers like, oh my God, there's Billy down at the bottom. I'm going to go get him. He probably had a heart attack. No, that person doesn't understand what's going on at that scene, and he crawls down himself. And now we got to rescue 2 people, right? Hopefully, at some point, your incident commander is going to go there and go, okay, we got 2 people down in a hole. This is bad. There's something wrong. Go get your SCBA. Go break out the confined space rescue equipment. You gotta, when you go to these types of calls, you gotta have the right equipment to do the job, or you're gonna get hurt. It's not gonna go well. So, this is you. I know we're new, but even you can fit into this. I definitely, as a lieutenant, I definitely have to follow this. But you, as an employee, as a new firefighter, you're always asking these questions. It's not just when you get there, because things change. They either get better, they stay the same, or they get worse. And we gotta always ask ourselves, is what we're doing to help our victim or our patient helping or making it worse? Are we gonna actually be able to save this person? Do we need more resources? Do we need another group, like a technical diving team, because somebody fell off their boat and now they're trapped under the water or under the ice? Do we need more specialized people that have better training than we do? So we need to ask ourselves when we get there, why are we there? Why did they call us? What happened that made somebody call 911? We're fixers. In the fire service, if you think about it, firefighters get called out of the station to help people solve their problem. Something happened to them or in their life that has gotten to the point where they no longer can take care of themselves or fix the problem themselves. So they call us and we get on the truck and we drive out to the scene, and we don't get to leave without fixing the problem, right? Like, we don't go to fires and go, oh gosh, the fire's too big. We're just gonna, sorry about your luck, we're gonna drive back to the station. Hey, good luck with that. No, we're gonna stick it out to the bloody end. If we gotta call for more trucks, more people, we're gonna call for more trucks and more people, but at the end of the day, or days, the fire's gonna be out. When somebody gets trapped under the water, if we can't rescue them, we're gonna stay there until that person is recovered. That is a hard truth about saying recovery is when the person has died, and you are gonna gather that person's body. That's part of our job, right? But we wanna get there and get the call over efficiently and correctly so we don't have recoveries. The goal is for living victims, right? So, again, we've asked, why are we here? But when we get there to the scene, what is happening at the moment that we get there? Is there a fire? Is there a plume of smoke? Are there multiple people on the ground? Are we seeing